So let's start with the imitation problem. And I will copycat an author. This is a book, a very, very interesting book. It's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Despite of this title, this book discusses a lot of philosophy, and it's a real class on how to write. Okay, despite the story itself, which is very nice, it's a real class on writing. So the book is about this English professor, this English teacher that takes a motorcycle and goes around the US only traveling by secondary roads and never taking the main roads. Okay? And when he does this trip with his son, he's thinking about things that happened to him during his life. Okay? So many times he is remembering how he was dealing with his students during rhetorical classes. Okay? So he says, what you're supposed to do in most freshman rhetoric courses is to read a little essay or a short story, discuss how the writer has done certain little things to achieve certain little effects, and then have the students to write an imitative little essay or short story to see if they can do the same little things. Correct spelling, correct punctuation, correct grammar, hundreds of rules for itsy bitsy people. No one could remember all this stuff and concentrate on what they are trying to write about. So what he's saying here is that you are taught to imitate good writers to be a good writer yourself. But it's almost impossible to do because you don't really know what was on their mind to try to imitate them. So what you are really doing is that you are trying to imitate some structure without the knowledge of the structure. And for me, this is the difference between copying and imitating. So it's the difference between reproducing something that could be useful for you and just imitating. Because when you don't understand what you are talking about and you try to reproduce something, this is imitation. So I don't know if I'm giving a bad connotation to imitation and not a bad connotation to copying. Okay, I think you can copy. As we said before, there is a lot of information in the world. We don't need to produce it all again. So we are allowed to reproduce other people's, we are allowed to quote, we are allowed to cite, but there is a difference when you know what you are talking about and when you don't know, when you are trying to reproduce just something that you heard. Okay? And the other important thing about limitation, and of course, some of these structures that you cannot imitate, it's the proper rules of the language. Okay? So, and those writers, they many times they can create these little things and certain little effects. I mean, like change the structure of a sentence, for example, so it can call your attention, even if it's by mistake. There is this American author called Bukowski that writes a very low literature. He's very famous because he tells all these stories about drunk people and it's a kind of pornography literature. And he starts every sentence, he never uses capital letters. So he starts every sentence with a non-capital letter. So, but he is a very good writer, okay? And so he can create, it's a kind of effect that he can allow himself to produce. And you at least, have you noticed, he never starts any sentence with capital letters. Okay, so again, he was trying to get his students to write. So he was giving any given topic. It could be write about this beach over there, okay? And he couldn't get the students to write. The students were having writer's block. And so what he could notice from this experience It's the particular case of a girl, of one of the students, that couldn't write after many days. She couldn't write anything. She had a real block and she couldn't write anything. So she was blocked because she was trying to repeat in her writing things she had already heard. She couldn't think of anything to write about because she couldn't recall anything she had heard that was worth repeating. And this many times is the case. Okay? You are trying to recall things that you heard because first you are afraid. You are afraid of speak your mind. And then what you try to do, you try to copy someone that you know that was, it was a good writer. And then you cannot remember any good writer that said something about this beach over here. And then you simply cannot write anything. She was strangely unaware that she could look and see freshly for herself, as she wrote without primary regard for what had been said before. So what he did, he said, okay, so don't write about the beach. Write about a boat on the beach. And she still couldn't write. And then he said, okay, I want you to write about the red stripe of the right side of the boat. And then, of course, that was something that she could never think about anything who had written anything about this very specific thing. So when he narrowed down to the one brick, because he told her, okay, write about the city hall building. And she couldn't even write about that. So he said, start to write about the first brick on the southeast corner of the building. And then she started to write. And she wrote like 3 or 5 pages, not only about the brick, of course, but starting with the brick, she could, break the writer's block caused by the need to imitate. So narrowing down to one brick destroyed the blockage because it was so obvious she had to do something original and direct scene. Okay? So I know that in many tests that you have to do throughout your life, sometimes the questions are not good. The questions are vague. Sometimes as vague as the little move that we saw. Okay? So it's also responsibility of the professors, of the teachers, to write good questions, precise questions, where you can give, of course, a precise answer. But when you have to write by yourselves, also an essay, a blog post, an article, so it's your responsibility if you have a writer's block, or if you are, try not to imitate. So think about first, what is the story that you want to tell? Put it in a two sentence length, okay? And then try not to imitate. Write by yourself. Try to look at this topic as it was the first time that anyone was looking at it. Okay? This is very funny. This is to illustrate what I'm saying. Okay? So it's 2 slides. I'm going to read it to you so we can calibrate the reading speed. It's from a Portuguese, African author, but a Portuguese speaker from Angola called Agualusa. So it's a little essay in a short stories book. Okay, so it says, he continued to kiss her as if it was always the first time. He used to bring her a rose when she woke up and breakfast in bed. Never forgot important dates. Loved to cook and did not like soccer. Didn't drink, didn't curse. Cleaned the dishes after himself and the lavatory after shaving. Played chess with his mother-in-law. One night, however, she packed and left. Her mother didn't understand. What happened? The daughter shrugged the shoulders. I can't stand everything but bad lines. Even worse, bad lines that have been repeated to exhaustion. The mother, poor her, still didn't understand. what did you mean by lines? The script, she explained. For example, a flower to another flower. Every day he wakes me up with the same quote, a flower to another flower. Or simply, I love you. This was every day. Okay, it's better than, hey baby, you rock. But every day, you know what he said? Do you know what he said when we got married? This is the happiest day of my life. And when we arrived at the hotel, yes, exactly, finally alone. She left the night, he said, this never happened to me before. And it was not because of what happened. It was because of the text. He could have said something else, couldn't he? So she wanted him to create names. Your splendor, paradisiacal muse, which is funny because this is the scientific name of the banana. You know, it's Musa paradisiaca. It's such a beauty. After that, I started to pay attention to scientific names, and some of them are very, very beautiful. Okay, so Musa paradisiaca is the scientific name of the banana. Morning star, things like this. It didn't matter if they looked like ridiculous, if they were tacky, is what he wrote on the test. She wanted personal lines. It was not enough for her to know that she was the only woman in his life. She wanted him to make her feel unique. So even if it was ridiculous, okay, it had to be original. So don't be afraid of looking ridiculous. It's much more important to be original than to be ridiculous. Her mother agreed. However, she was upset. The son-in-law was a flat. She had to recognize. But Chesed very well. Whenever she won, he would say, I let you in. Okay? So, this is the kind of things that imitation can produce. Okay? So, most of the time, imitation is bad. Really bad. Okay? But, why do we imitate so much? Okay, again, it's a little bit the fault of the teachers. Because when we are kids, we don't imitate a lot. Okay, we do imitate, we are reproducing what our parents are doing, but we are making lots of connections. And then it's probably school that teaches us to imitate, and we are more and more losing creativity. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to you about how to ask good questions, and we are going to see a little bit more about this, the effect of the school and on creativity. Okay? So, the same book again. I'm trying to stick to the colors, so it's the Zen and the Art of the Motorcycle Maintenance. He's saying, if you don't imitate what the teacher wants you to get, what the teacher wants, you get a bad grade. Okay? In college, it's a little bit more sophisticated, of course. You're supposed to imitate the teacher in such a way as to convince the teacher you are not imitating, but taking the essence of the instruction and going ahead with your own. That's when you get A's. Okay? Originality, on the other hand, could get you anything from A to F. And this is very interesting because it's what Sonia was telling you. Okay, so I think, and that's what she meant when she said to Marcela and to Thais that they took a dangerous path. Because, of course, if they are not, in this case, not because they were imitating, but because they were not following the instruction, okay, following the task. So when you get a dangerous path, of course, you can get from A to F. In both cases, they got A's. Marcela's talk especially was very nice. You could see a lot of emotion and could do it very well, okay? But it was dangerous because it could be, okay, something very bad. Then, as a result of this experiment that he was doing with his students, he concluded that imitation was a real evil that had to be broken before real rhetoric teaching could begin. Okay? This imitation seemed to be an external compulsion. Little children didn't have it. It seemed to come later on, possibly as a result of the school itself.